morning again.
Good morning.
I'm telling you, the last couple of weeks we've been blessed with a handful of youngins with us. I love it when I hear a bunch of little feet and see a bunch of little people running away when I start to preach. So it's always, I can't think of a better reason to see people running away from me. But no, as I mentioned last week, last year I preached in a time machine, and this year I'm preaching in front of Babel. So if you can't understand me halfway through, then we understand why. But I guess I could always just go back in time. But no, we had a great week. Thank you again to everyone who helped out. If you were here and you were helping out and you happened to take some pictures, I recently switched from Mac to PC, and I'm not really sure how to make a movie yet. But I'm hoping to make a quick movie to show over the next couple of weeks, so we can share with everyone how much fun VBS was. So if you have some pictures, please send them to my email address. It's found in the bulletin, business cards, directories, flyers, it's everywhere. But it's ogcclakelyn@gmail.com. Please send me any picture you have. If I don't like it, I just won't use it. So. But please do that. We're going to get something put together. For instance, when I have Silly Strong being sprayed at me, I didn't get any pictures of that. So please share those. But moving forward, it's if you recall, the last few weeks we've been working through stories of Jesus. We're moving trying to move somewhat chronologically. We're going out of order here and there. We're trying to work our way through the stories of Jesus this summer, or the most that we can. We might have to pick up next summer and finish them out. But this morning we get to one of, I say this every week, it's one of my favorites. It might be one of all of our favorites, but we get to an interesting one. It's a little different. We're going to be looking at the faith of someone that we don't expect to find faith in. And on top of that, we find great faith. Faith greater than anyone in Israel. But we find it in a person we don't expect to find it in. But we find it in a Roman soldier and a centurion. How do we find this great faith in the centurion? How? It doesn't make any sense. We don't expect to find this as we work through the Old Testament, coming into the New Testament, coming into a people who are being controlled by Rome. Coming into the position where the Jews of this time, Israel, was paying their taxes to Rome. They were not a big fan of Rome. They did not like Roman soldiers who carried out the work for Rome. And then we arrive today, and Jesus tells a Roman soldier, he says, Israel, look, this man has more faith than any of you. It's an odd situation. I think it's one worth diving into. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Luke chapter 7, the first 10 verses, 1 through 10. If you don't, as always, we have them up on the screens as well. So Luke chapter 7, verses 1 through 10. When Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. There a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, "This man deserves to have you do this, because he loves our nation and has built our synagogues." So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to meet him. "Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and this one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, "I tell you, I have not found such great faith, even in Israel." Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. Our text this morning is interesting. It's unexpected. We see in verse 9 that this Roman soldier, this centurion, this would be like a lieutenant. It would be someone with many men under them who had worked his way through the Roman ranks. This Roman soldier has great faith found not even in Israel. This Roman, this Gentile, had more faith than God's own chosen nation. How do we get here? This is odd. This is weird. This is unexpected. And it begs us a few questions. The biggest one being, what makes this guy so special? What makes his faith so different, so great? What makes this story worth including? How in the world do we get to the point where a Roman soldier, a wealthy Roman soldier, has a great faith found not even in Israel? Of course, to answer these, I think we can go back to the text and we can read into it a little bit. Our text this morning, I believe, gives us three distinct ways that this centurion soldier was different. Our text gives us three traits of this man of great faith that set him apart of the Pharisees and the Jews in his day and age. Our first of which is that he valued his servant. He valued his servant. In verses 2 and 3, we read, "There a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant." It may seem odd for us today to think about it being something special, something noteworthy, for someone to value their servant or their worker. But it was odd. It was especially odd for a Roman soldier, for a Roman in general at this time, to value anyone but himself, let alone a slave or a servant. These slaves and these servants in the Roman law were simply tools for getting their jobs done. And in fact, Roman law allowed for, at the end of someone's service, whether they were too old, too sick, too weak, you could dispose of them. You could drive out and leave them on the side of the road, broke, poor, homeless, and hungry. And it was of no consequence. A Roman writer once said, just as you retire old farming equipment, when it gets to that time, that's where they were. And this man values his servant. Values him so much so that when he is about to die, he doesn't drive him off, leaving him on a backcountry road. He spends his time and energy seeking out Jesus to provide a healing that only he could provide. This is a powerful Roman soldier. His time was valuable. He used it to seek out healing for this servant that should have meant nothing to him. He valued his fellow man, even his fellow man who ranked so far below him on any social scale. He took time from his busy schedule and from his priorities to make this lowly servant, whom he owned, he spent time out of his day to seek out help for this servant. He valued his fellow man. This, of course, says a lot about what kind of man this soldier was. He was someone who valued those who were less important than himself. He valued his servant who could do nothing for him socially or economically, his servant who was so sick he was going to die. He valued that person's life and worth. This, of course, holds truth for us as Christians today. We, as Christ followers, as those following Christ, as Christians, ought to also love those who are socially less than ourselves. Maybe less financially stable, maybe less well-connected in our respective fields, maybe less popular, or even less fun to spend time around. We need to love people, and we need to value people. I heard once of this It was a college professor teaching a course in business. And it got down to the finals. And on the final exam, he passed it out, and they had been studying and studying over the last semester to prepare for this massive exam. And it had one question. It said, what's the first name of the lady who cleans the hallways? What's her name? What's the janitor's name? And his point, the professor's point being, until you learn to value other people, you can't succeed. I think that speaks a lot of truth. This isn't why we value people. We value people because Christ values people. God created them and God loves them. And we as Christians need to love them as well. And love them and value them even when it serves no purpose for us. Our world, of course, has many ways of tearing us apart and building barriers and divisions, even across similar people. Our world has any way of pitting us against one another. Even the most simple of understandings of our political climate in 2019 tells us that we are wired to disagree, and to disagree in a way that isn't necessarily always friendly. We are wired to think differently, and in that to start to begin to think less of each other, less of those who disagree with us. We need to fight against this mentality. We need to be purposefully and actively working towards loving and valuing our fellow man, even when it serves us no purpose, even when we disagree with them. That is our first trait of what set this man of great faith apart in our text this morning. Our next trait of this man is that he had humility. He had humility. We get this, of course, from verses 6 and 7, where we read, "So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, 'Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed.'" This centurion, this high-ranking Roman soldier, had humility. When we read this passage, his humility becomes evident. He did not even consider himself worthy to come and see Jesus. He knew that this Jesus had great power, and that was good enough for him. He didn't view himself or think of himself as worthy enough to actually come face to face with this Jesus. He valued his servant and wanted his servant to be healed, and set it as a priority to find him the necessary help. But he knew of the social norms surrounding Gentiles and Jews. He would not consider himself worthy enough to break the Jewish law. We do get a picture of this centurion who at least has an understanding or a deep respect for the Jewish faith of Israel. We get the idea that he's probably a worshiper of this one true God. He valued the nation of Israel, and he built their synagogues. And then he uses his understanding. A Jew was not supposed to speak with a Gentile. On top of that, a Jew was not allowed to go into a Gentile's home or have a Gentile come into their home. I told you, they really don't like the Romans. They do not like them. So this Jew, this Roman soldier, he finds the elders of the Jews, and he sends them to talk to Jesus. He goes out of his way. He was a powerful, ranking Roman official in the army. He could have very easily summoned Jesus to his house, and Jesus would have had nothing he could do about it. He could have walked up to Jesus, grabbed him by the arm, and walked him to his house. But he had humility. He wasn't going to break the social norms or the law that Jesus was following to force him to do anything. He did not consider himself worthy in the presence of Christ. He realized that this Jesus had great power, and he didn't demand his attention. He went through the necessary channels to request it. He sent others who could speak with Jesus, the elders. He sent others to plead with him to come help his servant. He made it clear that he himself was not worthy to even face Jesus. He himself was not worthy for Jesus to go out of his way to come help him, but he sent people to plead on behalf of his servant. He valued Jesus' time and energy even more than he valued his own time and energy. He was spending all this time and energy making it a priority to help his servant, his lowly servant, his sick servant. And yet he still did not consider his own time to be more valuable than this homeless Jewish rabbi. He valued Jesus, and he had humility. He had the humility to acknowledge how important he was on earth, but in comparison, how worthless he was in the presence of Christ. Of course, we too this morning should have humility like this man. We too should value the time of others even above our own. We should value the presence of others. We too should acknowledge how insufficient we are compared to Christ. How insufficient and unimportant we are in the presence of Christ compared to God incarnate. God who came to this world to die for our sins. We should acknowledge all that Christ has done for us, and we should value our fellow man whom also Christ has died for. Moving on this morning, we get to our last trait of what really sets this man's faith apart, what sets this man apart. And that is that he had faith in Jesus' power. He had faith in Jesus' power. We get this from verse 8, where we read, "For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and this one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." At first glance, it may seem that this centurion had kind of flipped the tables and was starting to self-brag a little bit. Hey, Jesus, I understand where you're coming from. I have authority. Look at all these people that I have under me. All these people that I tell them, go, come, and do this. And they go, and they come, and they do this. But he isn't doing, that's not why he shares this. The centurion is telling Jesus, I understand what it's like to have earthly authority, but you have heavenly authority. He's stating a fact. When I say go, the people under me, the soldiers go. When I say come, they come. And when I tell my servant to go do something, they do it. In acknowledging his earthly power, he is acknowledging Christ's absolute power. He is acknowledging that he has just as much power and authority over the earth, over the spiritual, over the physical, that this man would have had over his soldiers and servants. Jesus is more powerful and has more authority over both the spiritual and the physical powers than this lowly centurion had over the people in his care. He is expressing a faith in Jesus and a faith in his power that overextends over this world. This great Roman official in the army acknowledges that he has a faith in Jesus' absolute power and authority over the physical ailments of his servant at home. He acknowledges that this healing of his servant isn't a magic trick that's done in person. It's not a medical treatment. Jesus doesn't have a secret cure-all that he needs to spread over this man. This healing power of Jesus is something so much greater. So great, in fact, he can send word, and Jesus can say the word, and his servant can be healed from miles away. And this is what seems to really set his faith apart. This is what surprises and amazes Jesus. This is what makes this centurion's faith so marvelous, so much greater than even what was found in Israel. He had the faith and the authority that the Son of God came to the earth with. We, of course, should also have this kind of faith. We too should have faith in the power of Jesus. We as followers, we as Christ followers, as Christians, need to have the same faith in the authority and the power of Jesus. This same Jesus who healed a servant from miles away, a servant he never met, probably never met. He healed this servant. Jesus gives us commands, and we should have faith in his power to do the commands that he has given us. He has told us to follow him. Then he has told us to go out and make disciples, to baptize them, and to continue spreading the good news of his resurrection. We need to have the faith in his absolute power and authority necessary to believe what he came and what he did, and to trust him enough to do what he told us. He has the authority much as the Roman who said, "Go, come, and do it." Jesus tells us, "Come to me, go out and do it." Much like the Roman did. And I think many of us this morning often need to be reminded. Jesus commanded us with his authority, much as this Roman commanded his people with his authority. We came, we need to go, and we need to do it. If someone has shared this gospel message with you, if someone has told you about this Jesus who came some 2,000 years ago to walk on this earth in human flesh, if someone has shared this message with you and you come this morning ready to make the decision to give your life to him, if you're ready this morning to be baptized into his family, I would love to speak with you about that. If you have any other decision to make for Christ today, I'd also love to speak with you about that decision this morning. Our invitation hymn is going to be Only Trust Him, verses 1 and 3. Please stand with us as we